Much. Read on all of this from Bill Cassidy, the Louisiana Republican senator. He's the chairman of the Senate Energy Subcommittee. So we're very lucky to have him here with us today with all of this going on. Senator, good to see you.
Hey, thank you.
The president's had a very measured, cautious response to all these developments. What do you think that proportional response would be?
I was with the president yesterday in a meeting in which we were discussing the renewable fuel standard. At the end of it, the president, with about 10 senators present, went around and asked each what he thought we should do. And a range of opinions, but they all kind of coalesced on this, that Iran is suffering tremendously. This is almost like the hand being stuck above water by a drowning person. Almost everyone but one of their pension funds is now bankrupt. There is high inflation rates, there is civil unrest. And this is their attempt to provoke something which distracts their people from the miserable job their leadership has done. Now, among that, there's a range. I personally don't think we should be spending American treasure and blood in a war between Saudi and the Iranians. We should support the Saudis. We should recognize it's not the Iranian people, it's the Iranian leadership. Another person said no American died. Until an American dies, we should not commit American forces. But if an American dies, watch out Iran. And so there was this kind of range of thoughts. The president, though, by further ratcheting up the sanctions, further crippling their economy, brings to a point how their foolish leadership is hurting the Iranian people. Hopefully that forces a change of tune.
Do you think the Iranians want such a response?
I think the Iranian people want something to rally the Iranian people around the flag to mask the fact that the Iranian leadership is awful. They have spent their treasure in foreign adventure, while the people at home have no access to foreign goods. The sanctions the president has just strengthened will increase that pressure upon them.
Now, the new added wrinkle here, as you indicated, Senator, is going after the central bank here. That is freezing the flow of funds, both coming in and out. And then the question becomes what and how would Iran respond? Now, it has been able to do a lot of horrible stuff with sanctions that were already, in effect, considered among the world's stiffest and toughest. So who's to say that it still doesn't continue doing this kind of nonsense?
We have to assume that they continue to do it. I agreed with Ms. Heinrich that one thing we can do to support our allies is to put in she didn't say this, but implied it, put in those systems that would intercept missiles. So we're not, passive on this.
Did anyone say, though, Senator, in the meeting, I know you can't divulge every detail, but that going after oil facilities, which would be the more obvious proportional response since Iran went after Saudi facilities, that would boomerang on the West, not so much in the United States, but that it would result in higher prices, and that's what Iran wants, and that maybe the response should be a different type.
No one mentioned that. I think it's all understood.
Right.
We don't want the economy to tank. One thing I'll point out, though, this is not the OPEC embargo of 1973.
Absolutely.
But the American people, with the leadership of this president, this Congress, going after energy dominance, has now made the United States the swing producer. And we can ramp up production, one, to hold ourselves harmless, if you will, maybe even strengthen our economy, but also to help our allies. So I do think the strategy of creating American jobs by establishing American energy dominance, my state has benefited, is going to help our...
Do we have to tap the Strategic Petroleum Market?
I'm not even speaking of the SPR.
Right. So, there might not be a need to do that. The result this week has been fairly limited. Right?
Yes, you can just ramp up the production that you have in West Texas and Louisiana and elsewhere, and you can fill a lot of that void. If you need to put a little bit out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, yes, and we've been modernizing that reserve. It's based in Louisiana. I'm aware of that, but it's not essential.
So, Senator, when you look at this situation and you look at the countries that would be affected, besides Iran, if their central bank, had a sudden freeze on funds, Russia comes to mind, potentially China. This gets to be very big, right?
So Russia has tried to set up a backdoor financing system with the Iranians. So this may increase that trade. But what the Iranians want are those things which the Russians do not have. The consumer goods, the high-end electronics.
But you fully suspect that the Russians, at the very least, would offer them that backdoor route.
They've already have.
Right, and it would increase in this case.
I presume it would increase. I just think that there's a limit to that which it can do.
Would you do anything else to Russia because of this?
I think Russians are already sanctioned. I think that this is stepwise.
Right.
You always want something in your quiver because that is the next step that will occur. I'd prefer there not be kinetic action. I don't want dead Iranians. I don't want dead Americans. Don't want dead Saudis. If there's something we can do before kinetic, that would be best. If you have to go to kinetic, we'll support our allies in doing that.
Got it. All right, Senator, very good seeing you in the flesh.
Hey, thank you, Neil.
Very good to have you. Senator Bill Cassidy, the Louisiana Republican, in charge of that subcommittee that addresses energy. And by the way, to the senator's point, he was dead on right about this. While oil started off the week up smartly on Monday, about 15%, since then we have pared those gains roughly in half. And as he also indicated, it would be a very different situation as it was in the 70s when overnight those prices were doubling and tripling and even quadrupling. That was then. It's a very different energy world now. Stay with